Hello everyone, welcome to game 3 of Chess Olympiad 2024, India vs Iceland. So, here Vidit is playing against Hilmir Freyr Heimisson, whom actually I have played very recently in 2023. Vidit is black here and Heimisson starts with e4. Vidit goes c6, the Caro-Kann, my favorite opening. He goes d4, d5, e5, the advanced variation, which is the most critical test of Caro-Kann. Bishop f5, knight d2. This is a kind of a new idea, but still some 8, 9, 10 years old. White goes knight b3 immediately, stopping any kind of c5 break first, and then he will go for the standard developing moves like knight f3 and bishop e2. So black goes e6, knight b3, knight d7. As he has stopped the c5 break, black kind of prepares this after knight d7, knight f3, knight e7, just developing, bishop e2, h6. This is aimed at ideas like knight h4 and hitting this bishop, so black can just tuck his bishop on h7, castle, bishop h7, a4, a5. Black doesn't really allow white to get any kind of space advantage with a5. Black plays a5 himself. Here some kind of ideas might be bishop d2, queen e1, hitting this, c4. When black can go something like b6, protect this and prepare c5 in the future. White actually goes for bishop d2, knight d8. This is not really attacked immediately. White can try to attack this with queen e1. But white says I'll break open the center first. I'll go c1, bishop e7. Now he goes queen e1, threatening bishop into f5. Black goes b6, h3. This is just not really a good move. This is just a time waste. I think white could have gone c4, which is more critical because white is threatening something like c into d5, bishop b5, and moreover it's just taking a lot of space in the center. h3 is not really a good move, like this castle. Then he goes c4. Black goes bishop e4. I really don't understand this move, bishop e4, because black isn't really threatening bishop f3. But yeah, it says that if you take on d5, I will take with the bishop and put my bishop on this very strong square. But white just moves here, threatening some kind of f3, f4, g4, f5 ideas. Black opens up the position with c5. White plays f3. Here black takes on c4, saying if you take my bishop, I'll just take your knight, and I'm just a pawn up here. White takes on d5, c4. Black goes bishop c6. Here, actually, the bishop has moved from this very good diagonal to this diagonal, which is not really good. Because from h7, black bishop can help prevent any kind of f4, g4 and f5 ideas. But from here, it is not really doing much. So white could have gone f4 here, threatening f5 and opening up this bishop and putting some more pressure on the e6, f7 pawns. But white plays knight g4, maybe threatening some kind of bishop h6 and sacrifice, but this is not happening because this bishop and queen battery is very strong. It will just go bishop h4, queen g5 and just prevent any kind of attack. Black just plays h5. He says, I won't even allow you to sack. Knight f2. And he grabs the pawn. As people call him the greedy VD, he goes for the a4 pawn here, which is actually very safe here because black is also threatening some kind of bishop b3, b5, hitting this. So not only this takes a pawn, but also creates a threat, which is always very nice. He plays queen e4, creating a threat of his own. Also planning some kind of a battery on the black king. Black goes rook a7. Here white goes g4 here, trying to open up the h file, saying if you take here, I'll just take and I'll open up the h file, then threatening something like king g2, rook h1 and mate on h7. But black says no, I'll just keep the position closed with h4. White goes d4, which is really not a good move because he should try to attack on the flank because keeping the center closed. But himself opens up the center with d5, like just takes here, takes, and d5 is also a mistake because there's a very concrete reason which Vidit finds immediately. He plays knight c4 here, first bishop c4, and knight e5. The point is black can even go knight e5 here. The difference is queen e5, bishop b3, and queen d2. But white here is not really forced to take on e5. White can go bishop c3, which I think Vidit didn't like. But here it's still fine because black can go knight c6. This is a very complicated position, but black survives this. Black is threatening this d5 bishop and b3 knight. White is threatening this c6 knight and a4 bishop. So if white takes this, I'll take here. If white takes here, black will take here. So nothing is really happening here. But I can understand this being very difficult to understand over the board. Also after knight 6, there is some kind of threat of queen g6. But luckily here, black can go knight d5 and stop any kind of mating ideas here. Vidit goes c4, bishop c4, and he goes knight e5. So the difference here is black is threatening this bishop here and bishop b3, queen d2. So that's a double attack. And white can't really preserve his double bishops. So white has to go queen e5, black goes bishop b3, queen d2. After the dust settles, black is a pawn up with a very safe king here and a pretty unsafe king for white with a very strong dark bishop on c5. Here, Heimisson goes for bishop f7, which is actually a very nice tactic, but really it doesn't do much. It actually helps black in getting rid of this dangerous bishop of b3 for this lazy knight on c8 for just a pawn. Black goes king f7, rook c8, queen f5. It's a double attack, taking this rook, bishop f6, queen c8. Here I think Vidit could have immediately finished off the game with bishop d4, pinning this, after which white can only move something like king g2, then black will go rook e7, rook e2. But he first goes rook e7, which allows white to go knight e4, which would have been prevented if he had gone bishop d4, because the knight on e4 is very dangerous. With a queen on c8, knight jumping on e4, threatening something like knight d6, knight g5 somewhere. This becomes very tricky now. Black goes queen f4, covering this d6 and g5 square. White goes queen c6, threatening knight d6. Black stops this knight d6 with bishop e5. Here white just blunders with rook f2. Instead of this, I think white should have kept on the pressure and just given a check here. King f8, and then I think he can go something like rook f2 and rook c2. The difference here is, if black tries to go something like king g6 here, white can still go rook f2 and rook c2 and something rook c6 ideas. But as white goes rook f2 first, black gets this move rook c7, queen d5, and this very nice safe square for the black king on e7, which is super safe on e7, as white really can't do anything with the queen, the knight, or the rook, because white king is going to get mated here. White goes rook d2, black goes rook c1, king f2, king g2 is just rook queen h2 mate, king f2, queen h2, king e3, everything is forced here, and bishop f4. Black will just take the d2 bishop, and it still covers the d6 square. So like if he goes king d3, bishop d6, white still doesn't have any checks against this king. Queen b7, black will just go rook c7 and cover everything. Queen g5, black can just take here. Queen d6, black can just take here. Everything is, even though the king is just in the middle of the board without any guards, these long range pieces are covering it superbly. And queen d4 and bishop h6. This bishop comes back guarding g7, and still there's not a single check for white, and white is just losing this. Black is a full rook up, threatening mate on queen c2, rook d1, everything, and white just resigns. So this was the third game of round 2, and that is how India got the 3-0 lead against Iceland. If you like this kind of content, please like and subscribe, and I'll be posting the fourth and the final game very soon. Thank you.